The United States has been waging a war on drugs since the 1980s until present time. In this time, drug use has remained the same, if not increased. Laws have been passed to ban the possession, use, or distribution of most known drugs. Thousands of people have been imprisoned, some for life sentences, on drug-related crimes. Social programs have been instituted in schools to educate the youth about drug resistance, only to find out that these programs are ineffective. The United States government has spent countless billions of dollars on an effort to eradicate drug use. All of these efforts have proven to be futile. Drugs continue to remain a prevalent part of American society despite every effort to minimize their presence. The war on drugs began during the 1980s with the emergence of crack cocaine and all the violence that was associated with it. It has continued until the present and has resulted in the imprisonment of thousands. This war has brought negative consequences such as violent drug cartels. According to the Office of National Drug Control Policy, Mexican drug cartels are responsible for about 90% of the cocaine that's brought into the United States, as well as a large proportion of marijuana and methamphetamine. Not only that, but it's estimated that 8 Mexican drug cartels oversee drug operations in over 230 American cities. And this has resulted in violence along the border and cost many people their lives. It can be stated that the majority of drug crimes are victimless. Obviously, we can point to the gang violence associated with the sale of drugs to demonstrate victims, but I'm referring to casual users. People who use drugs for the most part are not involved in illegal activities other than the act of using drugs themselves. And this effectively creates criminals out of ordinary, otherwise law-abiding citizens. Regarding the violence associated with drugs and the victims it leaves in its wake, this would be negated if drugs were deemed legal. Gangs would lose control of the drug markets to private companies, as their consumer base would likely choose to buy their drugs at the store rather than on the street corner or some sketchy-looking drug house. Drugs would become a privatized market where competition results in a better product. Gangs would not be able to compete at that level and would eventually be forced out of the drug business. Not only that, but the government would be able to tax drugs heavily, much like they do with tobacco products, to bring in revenue. But one argument against the legalization of drugs pertains to driving while intoxicated, as there is not a roadside test currently capable, like a breathalyzer, that can instantly tell you how intoxicated a person is. And I would argue that the way things are done now are already sufficient for enforcing such laws. Like, if an officer believes that a person is impaired based on how they observe that person to be acting, they should be charged with driving while impaired. People have been charged with driving under the influence of drugs such as marijuana, despite there not being a roadside test for it. And one of the worst things about drug laws is that they turn ordinary citizens into criminals. I would say that the average user of drugs is not associated with violent crime or property crime even. Instead, they're regular people who use drugs socially, much like alcohol is used among most people in a social environment. Someone who's charged with possession of, say, marijuana now has a criminal record that comes with it all the stigmas associated with being a criminal. And the only people that these laws are punishing are citizens who are otherwise upstanding people whose only crime is using drugs. Legalizing drugs is obviously a huge decision and will not come about overnight. However, some states have begun to use other methods of punishment rather than imprisonment to deal with their drug problems. One such method is drug courts, and they've been very effective in keeping people off of drugs and out of prisons. The way these work is by sending people to rehab instead of prison, and a judge usually oversees a person's progress throughout the program, and if the person fails to continue treatment, they're sent to prison. So this usually keeps the drug users properly motivated, and in turn reduces the amount of people that are sent to prison for drug crimes. People will always do what they want to do, regardless of what laws are in place. For crimes involving the use or possession of drugs, there's no victim other than the drug user themselves for the most part. I believe that people should have the right to do what they want to do with their bodies, so long as it is of no consequence to anyone else.